This is Elevator People, conversations about taking ideas to the next level on behalf of visionary leaders. I'm your host, PJ Simmons, and I serve as VP of Marketing at Whiteboard, a creative agency serving visionaries seeking to make vision visible. From the outside, business often looks like numbers, revenue, headcount, valuations, but dig just beneath the surface and you'll find something else entirely, a story. A story about vision, identity, and the often unseen forces that actually shape how we build and lead. My guest today is Benj Miller, founder of System and Soul, and someone who knows firsthand that behind every great company is a tension between structure and spirit, systems and soul. After decades of building teams and leading organizations, Benj is on a mission to help leaders bridge that gap. In today's conversation, Benj unpacks why clarity is dignity, how organizational debt compounds like interest, and what it really takes to lead people, not just to perform, but to thrive. If you've ever wrestled with the weight of leadership or wondered how to create a business that's not just efficient, but deeply human, this one's for you. Well, Benj, thank you so much, man, for joining me on the Elevator People podcast. I know you and we've been friends for quite some time, and you are an entrepreneur of entrepreneurs and have led some amazing teams in marketing, growth strategy, systems. I mean, you name it. You've done quite a bit. So I'm excited about the crew hearing not only what you've done, but really kind of the approach that you've taken in building your businesses that I think is going to be super valuable today. But to not steal your thunder, tell us what you got going on these days.
Man, super focused since the beginning of 21 on building System and Soul. We could talk all about it, but I am locked in through the end of the decade, so 2030. It's like as someone who was distracted by shiny objects and loves the 0 to 1 and then replace myself and get out. I am in this seat focused on what this business is meant to be through the end of the decade, which is both challenging me, growing me, and it's also invigorating right now. So I love System and Soul as an operating framework for organizations that understand that systems are great and we need systems, but at the end of the day, the people use the systems and the people can mess them up really bad or make them great. And so we need to spend as much or more time working on our people as we do our systems.
I love it. And so the question then comes to my mind: system and soul. Those are two big words with a lot to pack in. What do they mean to you, and how have those two words really kind of developed into the ethos of your business? Why those two words?
Yeah. Yeah. Because it is the both, that ampersand that sits right in the middle is as important as the two words. Because there's a lot of organizations in the world that can talk about systems, tools, frameworks, methodologies. They've packaged those up, in different ways. And then there's a lot of great organizations out there that come in and have some viewpoint on the soul side. But I don't know of another organization that's so focused on putting those two together and making sure that they work in unison. And so when we take these tools that have been proven time and time again, like the best practices of running a business, and infuse them with what we now know in 2025 of human dynamics, people,
Mhm.
leadership, culture, wiring, personalities, all of those things, then we can make both sides better. So the system side is very much the blocking and tackling. There's not a lot of everybody wants the silver bullet, and it's like, this is so boring, PJ. I think the org chart is the most underutilized tool in all of business. Like,
Mm.
walk into any business, if they've got a up-to-date built out org chart, I can tell you exactly what that business does, and I can give you a pretty good indication of how functional it is. But very few companies can actually produce that. It's either outdated or it was never fully filled in the first place. So it's little things like that that if we do them well as an organization, it's a massive advantage. We have a few unique takes on that, what should be on that org chart to make sure that it is kind of fulfilling the soul promise. but it's still just one of these blocking and tackling tools that we have to learn how to do well. On the flip side, the soul, I love that it's a big word that means different things to different people, because I love how it can encompass almost all that. But for us, we believe leadership is learning how to lead yourself well, and not just believe this. We have the science to back it up. Everybody wants to talk about what great leaders do. Nobody wants to talk about who great leaders are when they enter the room.
Mm,
And so if we start there, if we start with who are you when you enter the room and how do you lead yourself well, then everybody goes, okay, then we can lead other people. And it's like, yeah, let me put a little twist on that. If we lead ourselves well, then we can help other people lead themselves well. And that's how we replicate leadership. And that's how we develop culture. And that's how we create an identity for an organization. All of these little things wrap up into the soul of a business. We actually spend time with companies saying, like, not just what do you want to do and achieve, but like who do you want to be as an organization,
yeah.
so that the organization actually has an identity to it.
That's good. We're having very similar conversations at Whiteboard, and I may just treat this as an organizational therapy session.
Hey, I love coaching, man. If we want to go there,
Yeah,
oh, that's awesome.
exactly.
That's my,
So you talked about the difference. I love the illustration of leadership replication, of not just asking the question of how do I get a person from A to B, but how do I, as a leader, if I'm self-developing myself, how do I replicate that same mindset and ethos within a person so that they can have their own self-autonomy of upward mobility, whatever that may look like in life or whatever arena.
yeah, yeah,
One of the things that we're working through is what is the counterbalance of providing direction of career growth trajectories, clarity around how do I get to X, Y, or Z, compared to creating a mindset and an ethos around individual contributors to chart their own path in a sense, like having that innate entrepreneurial bent.
yeah.
Is that something that you guys dive into, and how have you kinda coached individuals through navigating that?
Three things come to mind. So let me kind of rattle through them. And the first is that not everybody is entrepreneurial or desires to be entrepreneurial. Some people are very happy and very content showing up to work and telling, give me my to-do list. Let me put my headphones on and I will feel successful at the end of the day if I can get my to-do list. All they need is the clarity of, like, are you winning or not? This is what it takes to win. Are you winning or not? As leaders, that's one of the things that we can, help them do. So not, I wouldn't even put an expectation of this like entrepreneurial thinking on everyone, especially as your company grows and scales. In the
Mm,
early days, it's vital. When you've got that founding crew, the first five, the first 10, everybody has to think like that. As you grow, as you mature, as you evolve, it's not reasonable, because you need some people that can just get stuff done. You need some people that can create process, follow process, because that's part of how you actually create scale as you go. The second thing that comes to mind is we have an acronym that we use over and over and over, and it's CAR. So just drive your car, drive your car, drive your car. But it's anybody that leads people needs to remember this acronym, and it stands for clarity, autonomy, and results. So if I can create clarity, this is what's expected. This is how we're going to measure success. These are your resources. This is the time constraints. These are your decision rights that you have. This is how it ties back to the overall mission of the organization. If I create clarity for you in that, and I believe I hired the right person, I should be able to give you full autonomy to go and then have a conversation around results. So clarity, autonomy, results. The number one reason that people don't hold other people accountable is actually what I call clarity guilt. As the leader, we haven't done our job being so specific about what's expected that we actually don't have any right to hold them accountable to the results. So clarity guilt gets in the way of a lot of these just clear, not even hard conversations. If you set the clarity, it's not even a hard conversation. It's an easy conversation. Hey, we said five this month and we were at three. Tell me what's going on. Like, what do we need to do to get there? Can you get there? What do you need from me to get there? Right? We're just having a conversation around results. The other big idea that comes to mind is what we spend a lot of time on. So when we first start working with an organization, we help them create a roadmap for their organization. Tells them who they are, what they're trying to do, some rules for how they're going to get there, what they want the culture to be. We talk a lot about the bets you're making as an organization in order to get you to where you want to be. And then, eventually down that line, we help the organization, everybody build their personal roadmap. So this is directly to your question. If you, PJ, fill out your personal roadmap and you report to me, I'm going to have a quarterly coaching conversation around your roadmap. And your roadmap is going to be something that you could almost take with you to your next job.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with whiteboard. It has nothing to do a little bit at the bottom, but like the top two sections are PJ. This is your personal roadmap. This is who you are, what your sweet spot is, where you thrive, and then some of your ambitions personally and professionally. And we talk about how that intersects with your job, your role, your life right now. Is this business serving you in pursuit of your roadmap?
Mm-hmm.
There's the idea of contribution, right? Like you get paid, right? But in return for you getting paid, and this is fun too, the compensation isn't just financial. It's social, it's spiritual in terms of, are you seeing that your your work has a greater purpose?
Mm-hmm.
We've got 6 dimensions of this compensations, financial being one of those. You're getting compensated. And then in exchange for that, the organization needs compensated with your contribution to the organization. So let's get really clear on what that looks like. Like you wouldn't be okay if you're doing your job and you're like, yeah, your contribution back to you is just we'll figure it out at the end of the month and we'll change it next month and it'll be just kind of fluffy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's fair that this is mutual. But if you have a roadmap, then we can have a quarterly conversation about how you're progressing on that roadmap. And I can also speak into, hey, you say you want that next level in this organization, or you want a bigger team, or you want that promotion, but this is what that looks like. And here's the things that you would need to be thinking about in order to move to that next level. And so often we talk about the things you have to do to gain the skills to be at the next level.
Mm-hmm.
What we find is actually harder and nobody talks about is, what do you have to stop doing and leave behind to go to that next level?
Yeah.
So most individual contributors that have derived value from doing things directly and producing their own results really, really struggle to go manage a team. They can manage a team, maybe, but they still want their contribution, and they're probably still weighing their direct contribution over what they can get out of other people. And that's actually one of the biggest challenges to leveling up.
Yeah. This is so. Do you work through any nuance? I think was it Kim Scott wrote a book called Radical Candor.
Absolutely.
And yeah, in the book, separation between rock stars, superstars is how she explains it. Individuals who, and let's just put managers that can manage groups of people versus people who are totally content just being an IC, but still
Mhm.
want to see like, hey, I don't want to be making the same amount of money for the next 3 decades of my career. So what is the
Yeah.
upward mobility opportunity for me as an IC? Does your team work through any of that new nuance in helping both parties thrive, whether they are kind of that superstar manager point or the rock star IC?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, the most important thing there is just having a candid conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
Like my brother worked for me. He still does. I think we're at 17 or 18 years, but probably a decade ago, he sat down at my desk and like with his version of a resignation letter, and he was tired, worn out, and just done. I'm like, bro, what's up? And he's like, I don't know, man. I just want to go in my garage and like do carpentry and like just have a really, really simple life and blah, blah, blah. And we just started processing and digesting this. And he had some expectations that he put on himself. He thought we had put on him that, to keep progressing, he had to take on leadership. He had to
Hmm.
take on management. He had to take on a team. And I'm like, dude, you are in your craft. You're the strongest technician in the city of Atlanta in your craft. We would be stupid to tell you that you have to manage people. There's
Hmm.
zero, like, we thought you wanted that. You don't want that? Done. Tomorrow. You don't have to manage anybody. And so we took all that away from him and he went back to be, happy as a clam. right? But it required that conversation. And then you can have a conversation like, hey, you're an individual contributor. This job's worth this. This is what creates more value in a role like this as an individual contributor.
Hmm.
Which, this is total sidebar, but in the age of AI, like that's a really fun conversation right now.
Hmm.
How do you 2x yourself using some of the tools that just became available
Dude,
in any individual contributor role?
that's great. And do you think it is leadership's responsibility to create that level of clarity for team members that are on your team?
It's mutual. There has to be conversations. That's why that roadmap is so powerful. I can't sit down and say, PJ, here's the plan I have for you at this company. Like you've got intrinsic motivators, like, and there's also
So
season. We
good.
talked about those six
Yeah.
dimensions, six of compensation. Well, they change over time. 8 years ago, maybe you didn't need flexibility as part of your compensation, but you got three little kids at home, so you need some flexibility as part of your compensation. I'm willing to actually trade some of my financial upside so that I can be home at 4:30 every night because my wife really, really needs help, right? I want to have that conversation and figure it out together. And it's the same thing with the upward mobility. And again, I know you enough to know that you're like me, like continual improvement, lifelong learner, eager, like all these things. Not everybody is. And accepting that people can contribute at their level and letting them stay at their level if that's the level that they want to play at. I still expect a high level of performance,
Hmm.
but at the level that they're at.
Yeah.
But and saying that you have to, I want to create opportunities for people to progress as much as they want and are able, but I've given up wanting more for people than they want for themselves.
That's so, man, so good. Well, here's what I love. What I'm hearing so far is there's this mutual engagement. So you have kind of the uncoupling of defining systems and clearly defining soul, but then there's also those two have to marry and pair
Yeah.
again. Going back to more like, let's call it organizationally, what happens when a company has systems but no soul compared to a company that has all soul and no systems? What have you seen in your work that are the pitfalls of either ends of those spectrums?
Yeah, I can tell you exactly because that was my journey. I was a very, very soulful leader early in my entrepreneurial, journey. I came out, it was a swing of the pendulum because I was under a little bit of a tyrant in my previous job. And literally I'm like, dude, if that guy can be successful, I can be more successful because I actually care about my people. Period. No matter what I do, just care about your people. And so I became a very, very soulful leader. So the idea of like, PJ, you're going to have this metric I thought was like super demeaning to you, dehumanizing. And so over time, I learned that I was backwards in that. Actually, one of the most dignifying things I can do is give you the clarity of like, hey, this is the number that we need. This is what's expected. This
Hmm.
is the role. And now you can actually like leave at least knowing at the end of the day, at the end of the week, and you can do something to make sure that you are contributing at the level that the organization needs versus the just, hey, everybody want to play foosball at lunch. Like, I mean, I was that guy. I had a rock climbing wall that fell into a foam pit in the office, right? And not that that's bad, but like I also did not have the systems to go along with it.
Yeah.
So, I'm there, playing spike ball in the middle of the office, and people are like, "Can I just please have a clear job description?" And I'm like, no, you're good. We're killing it. So I
We got
started that
spike
way.
ball.
I started that way. And it was my people giving me the feedback that, like, hey, we could actually really use, it'd be really nice if, like, every time we did this exact same project, we didn't invent the process from scratch.
Yeah.
Or it'd be really great if you didn't jump into the project, like, just whenever you felt like it. And we knew when you were going to come in to add your input. So I learned the systems the hard way. I brought somebody in and fell in love. It was like the yin to my yang. On the flip side, when I first became a coach, I was only coaching on the system side because I wanted everybody to have the same experience I did.
Hmm.
But some of the companies that I went in, they were all about getting the system side locked down, but they didn't have the soul side to balance it. And that's when it was really, really obvious to me. I'll tell you very, very clear. I'll change some names to protect the innocent, but I was coaching a team with, this sounds like a joke. I promise it's not. I'm not changing this part. Sorry if it's you and you're listening. I was four people on the leadership team. By trade, it was three CPAs and a geologist. Okay, so super fun group. They were so all about the system. Every time I would ask something related to people or culture, their eyes would glaze over. And the moment I figured this out, like I was like, oh, this isn't going to work. They I got to the question of like, what are you actually trying to do here? What are we trying to create? What are we trying to accomplish? And usually people struggle with that question, and this team did not. They were all 100% on the same page. They all wrote down the exact same thing. We want to get to $40 million in 3 years, $40 million in 3 years, $40 million in 3 years, $40 million in 3 years. PJ, they wanted to exit the company. There were four shareholders, and it was the four shareholders in the room, and they wanted to exit for $40 million because the CEO's wife likes really, really nice things. That was driving the entire company. And I'm like, so let me get this straight. We're going to create this roadmap, and we go out here and we try and get all the employees on board. We try and rally our customers. And what we're going to tell them is, hey, you need to jump on this mission because in 3 years, when we get to $40 million, we are out of here. We are abandoning you, our employees. We are abandoning you, our customers, and you can find us in the Caribbean if you need us. Like that's the story we're going to tell. And they're all like, yeah, that works. And I'm like, okay, we're done here. Like these are not my people, right? And that's important. Like I had to find my people.
Yeah.
Luckily now with a name like System and Soul, you know what you're signing up for before you get into it. But I've seen both sides of that. And we have a saying, this takes a lot of calories to process, but the systems make the soul side true, and the soul make the systems matter. Because we can say to all the soul that I did bring, there was no cadence to it. So we might have a random Friday, hey, we're going to celebrate XYZ, but like that interrupted the project that they were about to finish, right? And it's random, and oh, we're gonna do the best coaching, but like I sucked at like, hey, we're actually gonna put this on the calendar and do it on a rhythm. So the systems actually made what my intentions for the soul become true.
Hmm.
And then if I didn't have the soul side, then the systems don't matter. We're building really big, efficient, shitty companies, but we're not impacting the lives of the people that we get to work with.
Yeah, that's good. So I love to take that practical application and apply it to elevator people themselves. So the concepts around elevator people is individuals who come alongside of visionary leaders, taking their vision higher than what they can take it on their own. So do you think that there is a responsibility, or practically how would you coach that type of profile of an individual? Maybe they're a mid-tier, maybe they're an individual contributor. I mean, heck, maybe they be a leader of the organization. They just may not be the head honcho. If they're seeing gaps in systems and or soul elements of their organization, how can they or can they influence those gaps?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the number one thing is that, well, let me start with this. So, PJ, do you know the number one reason that people don't hire someone like myself?
I don't.
So they'll say something like, we're too small, or I love the like, we got to get in shape before we go to the gym,
Yeah.
right? That one happens sometimes. Sometimes it's money, which sometimes is true. Sometimes it's like not understanding the value. But a lot of times the money things is even a mask. The number one reason is shame. So like to expose the inside of like an organization to the founder or CEO that's created that or created the environment or created, you know, maybe they haven't created the dysfunction, but they haven't cleaned it up either. And they see it and they're aware of it. There's a shame element that creates a lot of vulnerability to get over and invite somebody else into. It's the same for the question that you're asking. If you see something, to just go, hey, this is a mess, you're just poking the wound and
Mm,
triggering all that. Like they probably know,
right.
and they've probably tried to fix it. And the reality is they weren't created to fix it. And so the best thing you can do is come along and say, hey, I'm seeing this. Could I have your permission to try and fix it?
Mm,
Because if you're seeing it, then you're probably more wired to be the one to actually address it and fix it. So back to my like quarterly coaching, insufficiency, like to say, hey, could I actually put all of these on your calendar and schedule them all for you for the whole team to make sure that they're getting the feedback, and I'll come sit with you and help you make sure that you've got the notes you need before those meetings. holy cow, you have just partnered me and you did it without shaming me. And now the whole organization's better because of that.
I find that so true, even personally within our organization, is when I come to my leaders with either here's what I see wrong, but here's a way that I would recommend us trying to figure it out. Can I take ownership X? It is a breath of fresh air to
Absolutely.
them. Even better yet, when I just say, hey, I'm going to take care of it type thing. Same way with individuals that I lead when they
Yeah.
respond with that to me. It's just, it is absolutely huge.
Most founders are, and CEOs, this is a term I got from my coach, but are unequally gifted. Meaning
Mm.
you can see it. They walk into the room and they've got this special sauce that other people don't have. They've just got this thing. And it's the thing is different for, everybody, but they've got this thing. But just like the scales of life, there's a counterbalance to that make them like stupidly inept at certain things that shouldn't be hard. They're not hard. In theory, they're not hard, but they just can't find themselves able to do them.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Question that comes to mind for me is, and I would love to put myself in your prospect shoes. So, PJ, leader at an organization, senses or sees that obviously something is wrong within my own org. What is it that is attracting me to Benj and System and Soul? And what should the expectation be on that initial intake conversation with you to figure out how best you can help solve the problems that I may or may not be experiencing?
That conversation's a lot like you on this podcast. It's filled with curiosity. It's trying to see the root issue, the players involved. I'm also going to be kind of searching under the surface, whether I ever bring it up, whether you ever bring it up. I'm like, what's the thing that they're really hiring me for right now? Because a lot of times people won't say it.
Hmm.
A lot of times it's a player on the team that needs to not be on the team, and they're not quite they either need a second eye on it, they need to surface the things that are the root problem with that person, or just like maybe it's one of those deals where like, hey, we're going into a new season and the old team, there's a couple players that aren't going to be able to keep up. They're not going to, what got us here isn't going to get us there. Like my personal mission, PJ, is to use my curiosity to help other people find perspective. It's funny you use like an intake call or sales call. Like I don't ever like do that. Like I just get on the phone to try and help people if they want to, have a conversation about hiring me. We can talk about what that looks like. But
Mhm.
I want to help as many people as possible. I love to, if they're on the fence, I love to get in and do a workshop with their team, like for free. Like just like you get a little taste of me, I get a taste of you, see what some of the real opportunities are. All of that can happen. I'd rather spend an hour and a half doing work with people than just a conversation where we
Yeah,
just, open all the cans of worms. I'd rather see if I can create a little value in that time as well.
that's good. I love that. You're okay. Tell me this: leaders that you're having these conversations with, and I would totally put myself in this camp. So once again, personal organizational therapy question is: I find myself, if we were to separate these and put systems and soul on two ends of the spectrum, I know they're not within this context, but just for argument's sake, I have found that I personally, and I see this with a lot of leaders, are in this constant tension, whether it be seasons, whether it be current state of their business, that they're in this tension of maybe ping ponging back and forth between the two. Like I am so just like, I got to get my systems right, got to get my systems right. And like to hell with the soul aspect of it. And then the same
Mhm.
thing of like, man, but I deeply like am a caring person, et cetera. Like, does any like we're all gonna die anyway, so really, does any of this matter? Like, why am I trying to grow this sucker to whatever it is that I'm trying to? How do you is that tension real? And how do you maybe stewardship is the right word? How do you steward that effectively so that you're not in this constant state of analysis paralysis, but you can actually have some forward motion to experience some sort of traction?
Yeah. So a metaphor. Let me give you a metaphor and then the real answer. But as you were talking, I kept thinking about I am not great at meditating. Do you meditate? Do you try?
I mean, it doesn't last long.
Yeah. 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 Um, but what they talk about is when you get good at meditating, I wouldn't know. I'm speaking in the third person right now. But when you get good at meditating, right, it's not that your mind doesn't wander, it's how quickly you can bring your mind back to center,
Hmm.
right? So as you're talking about this like ping pong, like, yes, human dynamics, the human, based on their experience, and some of this is very, very deeply wired in us based on our own human needs is going to migrate more toward one or the other, system or soul. There's very, very few people that I've seen that are excellent at both. And I don't think the expectation is ever to, be dead in the middle or even hold both of them. But if you're wired for soul, like how quickly can you ping pong, like get back to, oh yeah, I've got it too, right? It's not never starting to let your mind wander. It's how quick can I get back to remembering that we've got to have both. The other thing, the real answer is this is like go back to an earlier conversation, but if I'm a very soulful leader, like the number one thing I can do is use my calendar to make sure the systems happen. We're going to have a weekly team meeting. We're going to talk about KPIs. We're going to talk our objectives on track. I'm going to have quarterly coaching. I'm going to do a weekly water cooler, check in with every person individually. I'm going to we can use our calendar to augment. If we are fully soul, how are we having, using systems, using our calendar, using our to-do list, using some tools to augment our system side. If we're all system, then it's kind of the same thing. How do we remember, hey, I've got to go once a week, check in with PJ,
Hmm.
right? So and how do I remember, hey, when I check in with PJ, it's not just how the project's going and what are the marketing KPIs. It's like, how's it going being a dad of three girls right now? Man, how are you doing? How's your personal health when you have all these new demands as a dad and this job that's asking a lot of you? Like those simple questions, like actually, you know, caring about the people that are in your care just go a long way. So I think we can use little tools to augment our weakness in those areas.
Yeah. And that goes back to that self-leadership aspect
100%.
that you were talking about and figuring out how to replicate that. Um, when you're working with these organizations, are there common system gaps that you come across of? And then on the other flip side, are there common soul gaps that you're like, hey, 8 times out of 10, this is this is a big issue on both ends of these spectrums.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm going to answer that two different ways. The first thing that came to mind is getting a good scoreboard as an organization it feels like the last thing and the hardest thing. We've created a lot of cool shortcuts for organizations to help them accelerate that now at
Mhm.
this point. But that to really get strong, knowing not just having a scoreboard, but knowing what that means for the organization, both in how did we do and how are we going to do. That's tough. That's tough. People, talk about like, oh, you got to have, but like getting there is hard. But let me answer that a different way because uh, I think if you handed me your org chart fully filled out and up to date, I would know so much about the systems of the business, so much about the business,
And you're talking
system
about
wise.
individuals on the team, roles on the team, responsibilities, and
Yep.
who
Yep.
reports to who.
Yep. And we put, a couple KPIs on those. We also add a mission for every seat, which is more important. It's like the overarching, like, hey, you go into battle, like your directive was to conquer that crossroads. But if you can't conquer that crossroad, the mission is to stop, the enemy from getting from X to Y, right? That's the mission.
Mhm.
We think the tactics are this, we think the strategy's this is how we're going to measure it. But ultimately, this is the mission. So each one of those seats need a mission that they can see themselves contributing to the overall mission of the organization. So some little things like that. But if you gave that to me, I would be able to tell you a lot about your organization. On the soul side, I think the number one thing is quarterly coaching conversations and go back to that personal roadmap. We actually use that as the tool to have those quarterly coaching conversations. And so there's, what I didn't talk about is that bottom section of the roadmap that does have, values alignment. Are you a fit for the seat that you're in, which is another acronym we use? Does it fuel your unique ability? Can you create positive, significant impact in the seat that you're in? And is that role timely for you? and the trajectory of your career and for the current place that the organization is right now. Like, is that a mutual fit? We talk about the KPIs that you have with that seat. How are they going? What are they looking like? What are the results that you're getting? And we talk about those 6 dimensions of compensation. And so there's everything from like, who are you from a mission standpoint? What are you trying to accomplish personally and professionally? What are you focused on right now? And then all these kind of, how are we executing against that? And so much of what we do, we talk about just distilling reality. Like, what is the reality? And if we can have a conversation about reality, then we can make progress, trusting each other, that we have each other's best intentions in mind. Otherwise, most organizations spend a lot of time in this fantasy land, like tiptoeing around the real problem, saying the real thing, getting to the real metrics and holding people accountable, all this stuff. It's just fantasy. But if we can surface reality and have a conversation about what's really happening, it's like that saying that a problem well defined is half solved. We're halfway there.
Yep. God, that's so good. You've worked with a lot of these leaders, a lot of these teams. Is there a moment that stands out for you over the years that you just like after the day was done, you kind of having that private moment to yourself or that thought, just like, man, this is why I do what I do? What is there a moment that comes to mind?
Yeah, there's a couple of fun ones. I'll tell you one that I was one of my favorite, and then one of my favorites only in retrospect. It was miserable, but in retrospect, it was awesome. So the fun one, I'd been working with this organization for a while, and we had, again, back to the org chart, we revisited, is there anything, especially from a senior leadership team level, I kind of teach them how to do their own function, their own departments and functions of the business below that. But, I had worked with this company for 2 years. Amazing turnaround. Amazing turnaround. We ended up selling it right after kind of the conversation I'm about to tell you about. But the senior leadership team had totally turned over by the time I started to the time I'm having this conversation. Same CEO, but like there was this one beautiful, beautiful org chart. I love my org chart, right? There's this one dotted line off of the CEO that still existed. We'll just call him Sam, right? And so I just kind of like gently like, hey, why is Sam still up here? And the room kind of talked for a minute. Well, he was one of the first employees, and I wouldn't feel right if he had to report to anybody, especially, now that we've got multiple layers and so and so. And I'm like, well, what is his contribution? What's his value? Like, does he belong there? No, it's really about, I'm like, okay, so again, surfacing reality. I'm like, so just let me get this straight. So Sam's emotions are running this company.
Mm-hmm.
And the CEO goes, Benj, and threw his pen on the ground, and like, but that those are my favorite conversations,
Yeah.
right? It's just like, what's actually the reality,
Yeah.
and now you can decide: is are Sam's emotions going to run the organization, or are we going to like actually step into leadership of what needs to happen? Actually, beautiful end to that story. They decided not to deal with it that day, and they coined a term that I still use. So I'm sure you're familiar with technical debt in the
Mm-hmm.
development world, right?
Yep.
They called it structural debt. They had
Mm.
structural debt, but they chose to not deal with it in that quarter because it wasn't the top 3 to 5 most important things to deal with that quarter. So they put it almost on the balance sheet as a liability, right? We've got this structural debt that we're going to have to deal with, but now's not the most important time. So the other story was a dumpster fire of a day. It actually wasn't that bad of a day, but we got to the end of the day. We always have people rate the meeting, and we rate it 1 through 4. I could talk about why, but four is like we do Olympic scoring. So it's a 4 unless it's not, but you can deduct for whatever you want. And we went around the room, and the we got to the CFO, who's a very pleasant, quieter force in the room. And she unleashed on the room. You guys act like this was a good day. You guys act like you're all excited because we know what we're going to do, but you guys won't do it. Nobody actually ever does what they say they're going to do. She blew up. She blew up. She went off. She's red in the face. She's screaming like I've never seen her like raise her voice or anything. Like everybody's shell shocked. We were wrapping up for the day. That turned into a 2-hour conversation. We finally get out of there. I'm driving home. The CEO calls me, and the first thing I say is, I totally understand if you want to fire me. Like it was a dumpster fire. Like I'm like, yeah, that you should not pay me for that. And that was awful. And I totally understand if you never want me back. Well, in that moment, the CEO had better presence of mind. because she said, Benj, I think that might be the most important moment for the history of our company. And in retrospect, she was right, because it took that moment and it took that CFO unleashing. We could argue whether it was the most productive way to do it or not, but it was very, very important for the trajectory of that organization to have that moment that felt awful in the moment, but it was actually really, really pivotal.
Yeah, it's fascinating how those responses can conjure clarity in a lot of ways and just freeze the room. And we've talked about scorecards, scoreboards. We've talked about accountability, org structures, but man, there's something in that clarity, candidness camp that is just the fuel that feeds it all, in my opinion. A couple rapid fire questions for you, and I know we're coming up on time, so I want to make sure that I respect it. Is you've been at this for a while. You've been an entrepreneur for many, many years. You've launched a lot of organizations. You're now coaching in the space. Let's just back it up to the last five. What's one belief that you hold today that you didn't 5 years ago, but now you wouldn't lead without?
It's a paradigm. In most problems, as a leader, I have some contribution to the problem, and my people need held up accountable regardless. So I think a lot of times people have, people are wired to react to either when something's wrong, it's either circumstances. I blame circumstances, I blame PJ, or I blame Benj. Those are my three options. People are wired with a default different combination. Like you might always blame yourself. I may always blame circumstances. Somebody else may always blame somebody else. And the reality is, I always need to take time to realize my own contribution to a problem. And at the same time, it doesn't excuse somebody else for not taking care of their stuff. I can't use, like, it's really, I always blame myself. Like, that's my first kind of default. How did I contribute? What is my, and even if I contribute, it does not dismiss the other person's contribution to the problem.
That's a good personal mirror for me. I totally see that within myself. That's really good, man. That's really good. Yeah, you got my mind noodling on that one. I mean, that's it comes back to self-leadership, you
It
know.
does.
It all comes back to how well are you leading yourself? How I know I was going to ask you rapid fire stuff, but I mean, what you
Well, you
just
said that, and then I paused 5 minutes to come up with an answer. So we both
oh,
failed.
but no, but that's unearthing a couple of things for me. In the context of self leadership, we all are somewhat products of our own environment. And let's narrow it focus into the organizations that we move and operate in 8 hours, 9 hours a day in, day out. For those individuals, whether you're a leader or an individual who's not, but you had this proclivity of like, good Lord, like let's get some stuff dialed in here, both on the system and the soul side of things. But you feel that others within the organization or the large majority of those individuals don't have those same proclivities. How does an individual navigate that? Do they try to foster and facilitate that internally? Is it a lost cause? Should they go explore that somewhere else? What's been your experience when that has been a tension?
I have a couple quick thoughts. One is find common ground. Like, where is the common ground? And is that actually more important than the differences that you're finding friction on?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's where we go back to organizational values. Those are the things that we've all committed to as part of being part of this organization. So is one or more, is one of us in violation of the spirit of one of those values? If so, then maybe one of us doesn't belong. And then, the last thing is just, how do we surface reality? Here's where I'm at. Here's where I feel like you're at. Is that true? Is there a way to bridge that gap?
Mm-hmm.
It's healthy. And I think most things are one, somebody coined the frame of like 5 brave seconds. Like it takes 5 brave seconds to get into a conversation that is not as scary as it feels like, right? All tough conversations you've ever had, 9 out of 10 of them go better than you expect in your brain. So it's like, just run into the mess, have the conversation and see what happens.
That's it. Organizational values, reality, candor, and just have the conversation. It's being in so many organizations throughout my career. One thing that has been true in every single one of them is that not a one of them is perfect. Where, where, where I've experienced pros in some has been a con in the other, and vice versa. Where I've experienced pros in others, there's been cons on the other side. And so I love
Yeah.
your point around, but what are the important things? And let's have a conversation around the important things. And that assessment that you were highlighting is my paradigm for investing or exiting? Is there enough there to keep me invested or not?
The other thing that all of the places that you've ever worked have in common is that you were there.
Yeah,
And
100%.
we don't just bring the circumstances of the moment in the current organization. We bring like our childhood baggage and
Yeah.
trauma and generations of wiring. Like it's all there. We're so human. That's why business is messy. Like, and that's why it's not just systems, because it doesn't matter how great your systems are. People show up and mess them up.
Yeah, man, so true. Well, Benj, where can we find you online? Where can we find System and Soul online?
I've got a really fun webpage, landing page, benjmiller.com. You can get to my LinkedIn, System and Soul. I've got a daily email that just has a very short, like 2-second thought reminder tip for leaders every day. There's 261 work days in the work year. So I really wrote it to remind myself all these things and shared it with some other people.
Love it.